Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing Voice of War by Zack Argyle, which is the first book in the Threadlight Trilogy. Now, this book was, I believe, a SPIFBO finalist a couple of years back. It came across my feed the other day. I think Daniel Green mentioned the author in one of his videos, and I went and checked it out. And I thought, you know what? That looks interesting. Let's check this out. This book is one of those ones that's recommended. I think it's been in quite a few videos. It's like, if you're a fan of the Cosmere, read this next. And let me just say, I definitely understand where that one came from, for better and for worse, as a little bit of a preemptive spoiler for this video, though I will keep this video spoiler free. So if you do want to go check out and read this book after, you totally can do so. So this book, I believe, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, was the debut for Zack Argyle, the author of this book. And I think as debuts go, this was really, really freaking good. He definitely has a very strong tone of voice coming right off the bat. The prose is solid. It's not bloated. It felt good. It felt snappy. It felt visceral. Like I really enjoyed his writing in this, which made the things I didn't like about it hurt that a little bit more. Because it's, when an author is fine and a book is fine, that's okay. But when an author is clearly really good and the book itself doesn't quite live up to where you think it can necessarily hit, that almost just kind of hits that little bit worse, than put it that way. So this book is essentially, I don't know how else to say it other than that it's a very strong fantasy world that, again, lives on its own planet with its own magic system, with its own ecology. In a lot of ways, I mean, it's where did I put it? It's this book. It's trying really hard to be this book. The Way of Kings. It is very much the first book trying to set up. I maybe should have worn a different jacket. This thing is loud. It is very much trying to set up this really big, broad world with these different countries and different groups of characters and unique flora and fauna and these big, epic. And there's a forest with the trees that are hundreds of meters high, and these chroma wolves, these very distinct beasts that are sort of molded to this ecology, and the concepts in it are fantastic. It's really, really good. But I just want to, and I mentioned that if you've watched my last video, my roundup for the month of March, I referenced it in this, is this idea that I think the author kind of set himself an impossible task, because I think this book would have been amazing if it was 900 or 1,000 pages long. But he did the right thing by every standard. I mean, who's going to read a 1,000-page book by a debut author? No one. No one's going to take that chance. From a commercial standpoint, it's absolutely the wrong thing to do. I totally 100% get it. But there are so many elements of this book, and I gave similar feedback actually to The Last Fang of God, another SPIFBO finalist, I think from last year that I read, where I said the same thing. I wanted more world building, which for me is bizarre, because I'm someone who normally doesn't like big bloated books. I like snappier, fast-flowing reads, generally. And I do think this book was a little bit let down, especially in terms of its characters, when it comes to just giving them time to live and breathe in this world. This book follows three main POVs, the main one being Chris. He is a general in this country's army. He is a threadweaver, and threadweavers are a very prominent part of these stories, as the Threadlight Trilogy would imply, and they're magic users, essentially. And this magic system is, if you're someone who's familiar with the Cosmere, this will feel very familiar. And this was probably one of my biggest gripes with this book is that the Sanderson effect is very real, to the point where even some of his language choice literally in the moment took me out of the book, and I went, what? Am I reading Stormlight? What's happening? Again, the names are very similar. I almost titled this video The Threadlight Archive, but that would have been mean. It's a little bit on the nose. And I appreciate that it's really tough and that no one owns language, etc. But some of the choices that were made. At one point, they reference heralds, just like as an offhand, like curse or something. Oh, the heralds. And I'm like, who? The who now? Those aren't referenced at any other point up in this book. There is a religion that is discussed, but the extent that we really know about this religion, as you learn in the first chapter, is that the priests are blind. They blind themselves ritualistically. And that's really all we learn about this religion in the whole book. And then we're talking about heralds, and I'm like, man, there's something there, and I really want to know about it. For those who have read Stormlight Archives, you know what I'm talking about, and you know I am maybe a touch confused. The magic system is super freaking cool, and I absolutely could see it fitting into a Sanderson world. Basically, the concept is that everything in the universe, or this world, are connected by these threads of energy, of life force, and that Threadweavers can see and manipulate these threads rather. And then that's sort of represented by green or blue. And with having green or blue, emerald or sapphire, you can push or pull on these different threads. Very akin to allomancy, very akin to surge binding. Yes, will feel very familiar. And the people, almost everyone, has one or the other, emerald or sapphire, and that really depends on what they can do. But they're not limited to just pushing and pulling on metals. They can push and pull on basically everything, and everyone has this core thread, this sort of central thread that attaches them to the world. And that's what sort of keeps them tethered to it. And when that breaks, so does the hold of gravity and pushing and pulling gravity, which is really interesting. There's a little bit more to it and sort of gets expounded upon as the book progresses, but that's basically the gist of it. And it's flowed into the combat very, very nicely. And the combat is extremely well done in this book. And again, I think the writing is very well done in this book, which is what makes this review just that little bit harder. I think some of the big issues with this really came in the fact that there are 3 main POVs in this book, and you only meet one of them at the 50% mark. You have Chris, who I mentioned at the start, and Chris, again, this general, he's a Threadweaver, and he loves his wife and child, and he will do anything to protect them. And Chris, at the end of the book, is still a guy who loves his wife and child and will do anything to protect them. And his arc is, things happen to him and his situation changes, but who he is as a person fundamentally doesn't change the entire course of the book. And that's kind of a little bit of my gripe. One of the main characters, Laurel, she comes from this sort of tribe that lives a very different life from the people in the main city that we sort of interact with. And she's young, she's headstrong, she wants to see the world, she wants to chase adventure, which is great. And she's also addicted to magic. And that's freaking cool. That is a very cool mechanic of this magic system that I really, really enjoyed. This idea that as you use it, your veins glow, and you sort of, it's like you're getting high on this magic almost, basically, and you feel giddy and you heal faster and you move quicker and you want to do, again, very much like Stormlight in the Stormlight Archive, except Stormlight has no negative side effects at all, where Threadlight absolutely does. And this character sort of deals with the repercussions of this over the course of it. But again, she fundamentally really doesn't change that much over the course of the series, which is kind of frustrating. I would say the character that we see that has the most, at least, internal conflict is Alvarax, who's the last character that you meet. And I'm not going to get into his stuff too much because it sort of jumps in later and there's some spoilery elements. Yeah, but he literally, I think at the Kindle, it's literally 50%. And this character just doesn't get enough screen time to have any sort of meaningful progression. And you don't really care about this character because he comes in so late. And I think, I haven't seen it really this bad in a novel. I don't think ever. But like trying to juggle POVs is not easy. And the idea of screen time and going is something that's really challenging, even for longtime veteran authors. And this book doesn't do like a chapter hop. This book does like 3 or 4 chapters with one character. You get a good chunk of them and you leave them for a while and you go to the next one. And I think sort of combining these two factors really made it tough, I think, to sort of get into the heads of some of these characters. You'd think it would actually make it easier, but I found it actually more challenging because you spend so much time away from them. In some instances, you're just like, okay, we're back here now. And let's be honest, everyone's going to sort of have favorite characters, quote unquote. Laurel she has her sort of bratty streak, quote unquote, but I think if it was completely accurate for a character in her situation, I think she was well written. Again, I think all the characters are pretty well written. I just wanted to see more. I wanted to see more progression, which is a little bit frustrating, to say the least. But yeah, I think it's, again, I think this author sort of set himself a really challenging task. This idea that you have this really amazing idea for a magic system and a world, and this idea of where it's going to go, and you're really not put in a situation as a debut author where you can give it the time that it needs to breathe. And I think this is another situation where so much time, effort, and energy was put into developing the world of the magic system, because in terms of pros and cons, that's some of the best stuff about it. And not enough time was spent thinking about what is the through line of your characters. Because they don't really have them. Like, again, this protect my wife and child. That is the prerogative, but it's not like we need to get to this place, and once we get here, they'll be safe. For Laurel, it's not like, you know, she goes and she kind of gets caught up in something that she's not supposed to. She goes back to the elders, and they're like, meh. It's not like she's like, cool, I'm gonna go on this big quest and adventure myself, and I'm gonna get revenge. She just kind of mopes until the story happens to her. And then she's sort of dragged into it, and you're like, great, welcome back, I guess. I don't know. I think a little bit more time, effort, and care could have been put into that. And that leads with, I think, the biggest single issue this book had, which was the third act. Again, I think the pacing in the first half of the book was quite good. But then, again, this character, Alvarax, that you're introduced to, makes a series of decisions very rapidly. Like, I will do this, I won't do this, maybe I'll do this. And you're just like, oh my God, okay. And you're just really thrown into it. And I'm talking like a series of pages. I did a review on Murtagh recently by Christopher Paolini, and I complimented the crap out of the third act in that book. The idea that the final confrontation with the big bad was this rich and rewarding confrontation that felt good, that you're like, wow, that's a freaking action sequence. That's a reveal. That's a reward. It felt awesome. This book, unfortunately, did not really have that for me. It felt very rushed. The pacing was very odd. There were stakes. Clearly there were stakes, but the stakes weren't outlined to us as the reader beforehand. They were just sort of hinted at. And so when things happen and things go wrong, you're just like, okay. And then everyone else is like, oh no. And you're just like, oh, are we knowing? Is it's worth, okay, I guess that's bad. But it's not ever really explained to us, the reader, up until that point. Oh no, that's a big deal. That's gonna cause some problems. Yeah, man. Somebody, again, I think it's harder when you know the author has the potential to sort of hit that little bit harder, or, you know, punch above the weight a little bit more, and it just doesn't quite deliver. And so I'm really on the fence with this series. I'll be honest. I don't know if I'm going to continue with it. I think if you've read the series, absolutely let me know in the comments down below your thoughts. If I'm totally off base, if the issues that I have identified get corrected in later books, if it's worth continuing, please let me know. I'm really curious, because I am 100% on the fence with this. I really want to support and showcase indie authors. But yeah, I'm just on the fence about this one. So yeah, again, if you guys have read it, if you have thoughts on it one way or the other, definitely let me know. And again, if you like this video and you want to see more content like this, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be trying to get on more of a sci-fi kick in the next little bit. I've been neglecting the sci-fi in my life. I need to get back into space. So let's make it happen. Yeah, that's it for this one. Again, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think as well. But yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.